Okay, hello, it's Toby from Heavyweight MMA here today with Colby Thicknesse, MMA fighter, to talk about one of his fellow gym members, Mr. Alex Volkanovski, who's going to be fighting against Brian Ortega on UFC266 on September the 4th. Should be a pretty exciting fight, I'd imagine.
Oh, I can't wait for it. I just can't wait for Volko to punch that bloke in the face.
Mate, you beat me to it. I was about to say off camera that Colby was just saying that Volk was going to get smashed, but you beat me to it. You told him the truth, which is what you feel. Now,
switching sides.
Now you sound a little bit biased there, Colby.
Yeah, just a little bit, eh?
We want an objective analysis of this fight, and you just come straight out and said you hope that he fucking smashes him. That's not very non-biased analysis.
Yeah, against anyone else, Volko fights, I'll be objective. But as we all know, Ortega is a bit of a clown, so he deserves it.
Yeah, man. I mean, I saw a little bit of tension in the house in the Ultimate Fighter and that, and of course for me too, you got to side with the Aussie. So I'll just assume that Ortega's a bit of a dick as well, and underneath I'll be going for Volk as well. That's how it is.
That's what we want.
You know, man, looking at these two, man, like I just looking at on paper, I got in front of me their records, and it's pretty cool, man. Like both of them are pretty much unbeaten, right? Like they've had one loss each on their record, so it's a heap of wins, man. It makes it pretty exciting that these two like almost unbeaten fighters are coming head to head, man. And both of them have had pretty significant wins, of course. Volkanovski, the more significant wins, having especially beaten Max Holloway twice. And of course, everyone talks about the MMA maths. Well, Ortega got pretty much pieced up by Holloway. And then Volkanovski went in there and beat him twice in pretty close fights, but he didn't look outclassed at all like Ortega did. So, yeah, MMA maths says Volkanovski wins cleanly.
Cleanly. MMA maths says Volko decision. When was that Holloway fight? That was, December 2018? Was that August?
Sure, man.
I'm not sure. 2018 though. So what's that? Yeah, over 3 years ago now. So obviously, as everybody saw in Ortega's last fight against Zombie, he's obviously evolved and got a lot better since that fight. He came out orthodox for about the first 2.5 minutes, and he switched southpaw for the rest of it.
Yeah,
he had his and he managed to keep he surprised me as well. I thought if old Ortega came in, it was going to be a Zombie victory on the feet, and Ortega would have to try and get him down and sort of catch him in the darts, the guillotine, that sort of thing. But he managed to just, piece him up on the feet for 5 rounds, got that nice spinning back elbow in the second, I think, which Zombie said pretty much shut his lights out for the rest of the fight. And then, Zombie pretty much, I think, just sort of stood in front, tried to catch him while blitzing in with overhands and left hooks, and Ortega was nowhere to be there. He was real good with his angling out, keeping his distance and that. Like, he fought a very intelligent fight against a guy like Zombie.
Man, he did so well, really. It's not often that you watch these fighters come out and show a whole new side of themselves and that they've really worked on something. Like, for me, it doesn't happen that often. Even when guys, as an example, know they're coming up against someone who's better in a certain skill and they work on it, they never come out and look as good as he looked, man. Because I really thought that Korean Zombie would come out and just take him out with the hands if they exchanged, and he just outskilled him completely from my perspective, looked good.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, Korean Zombie was coming off, was it the Moicano stoppage? He was on a bit of a tear from that one, and he was looking super dangerous, stopping Edgar as well, putting everybody out nice and early. And as we all saw with Ortega and Max fight, Ortega's hands definitely weren't his strong point back in 2018, but he obviously managed to evolve, fix that little hole. And like you said, fighters who can reinvent themselves almost, it definitely takes a skill and a sort of a talented individual to do that, which, as much as you might not like the guy, he's definitely a talented, good fighter sort of thing. It's not like what Usman's doing at the moment, how nobody thought Usman was going to knock out Jorge Masvidal in their rematch, and he does it and makes it look easy.
Now, what exactly is Volkanovski training for this fight? Just joking, man. I know you're not going to go.
What's his 5-round game plan and strategy?
His exact game plan, and what does he train day to day? No, I know you can't mention that, man. I'm just thinking about like obviously there's an interesting matchup between them in the grappling department. From my perspective and outsider perspective, Volk's pretty good with the wrestling side of things versus Ortega is obviously a pretty well-known BJJ high-level black belt. trained under some good skilled Gracie. He's a Gracie combatant, right? So they got a pretty
Gracie,
decent
I think
skill
his
set.
main one, yeah.
Yeah, pretty good skill set, man. He's got a lot of submissions on his name. So obviously he's a danger there. But then at the same time, Volk's got a few subs as well, guillotines, etc. on his record. So it's an interesting stylistic matchup in that way too. Like I think when you look at the ground fighting, people are more inclined to think that if it goes to the actual ground, then Ortega is going to have an advantage. However, people are thinking that it will be hard for him to actually get Volkanovski to the ground. And I think if you look at the MMA mass and just watching the guys, I think Volkanovski should have the edge in the stand-up and definitely have an edge in the power in the stand-up, have the ability to hurt him.
Yeah, it's like you said, like if it's a lot of people think like, oh, as soon as it hits a match, like it's got no chance, like Volko's done that sort of thing. But a lot of people don't realize, like maybe in a jiu-jitsu match that must be the case. Obviously, I'm going to show some bias, but I do think personally after Volko being able to roll with Craig Jones and that whole American experience, he really leveled up. Like I think his jiu-jitsu is really underrated, but obviously in the straight jiu-jitsu match, it would be hard for him to beat someone as skilled as Ortega or that. But people often forget that jiu-jitsu is different for jiu-jitsu for MMA. Like you can be good off your back and guard in jiu-jitsu, but if you've had nobody's ever had Volko on top of you, like punching your head in, jamming you to the cage and like stuff like that. It's a totally different world. Like I don't care like how good you are for a back. As soon as you, like the saying goes, you hit a black belt once, they turn to a brown belt, hit him again, he turns into a purple belt and so on. Like there's only so much you can do jiu-jitsu on a good, well-rounded MMA guy who's very sort of comfortable in every position. He keeps his base well. He's able to land the damage and shots, and like all it takes is like one little cut or something and the jiu-jitsu guys can start to panic in that. But as we all know, Ortega's probably not going to be like that because he is, as we saw him in Max fight, he's one tough son of a bitch.
Yeah, man. And then two other things that kind of poke out to me, it's kind of interesting, is Volk's like shorter, but his reach is longer. You kind of expect like a little dude to have like little T-Rex arms and not be able to reach, but that difference in is like 7 centimeter reach advantage to Volk, but he's lower in the height, which it's kind of might cancel each other out a bit, right? Like you normally expect the taller guy to have the reach and as well as having the height, which draws even more of a distance. But if he's got it, should be pretty close in that respect. It's kind of strange, right?
Yeah, I think it will be the same sort of thing as with, I think Max and Ortega might be similar heights.
Yeah.
So I think it will be sort of a similar thing where Volko had a longer reach than Max. So I just thought Max is normally the longest, taller guy for the division, which he was a taller, and he may be a little bit longer due to like the height and being able to punch down. But the way Volko has them sort of like orangutan arms and how he can cover the distance and stuff, like you saw with Max, he caught Max a lot of times flush and cleanly, purely from pretty much spots where Max thought he wasn't going to be able to get hit by a guy at Volko's height in that.
And Max has got mad like distancing too, but Volk sort of like throws over the top of his hands and that a lot and lands kind of those kind of straights that turn just into a slight overhand, right? And lands a lot of them on Max. I was watching a fight earlier today just to refresh my memory.
Yeah, he manages, like he manages like throw the shot and like almost change it, depends on where they're going to be, and hits them sort of at the end of a punch instead of like he might have the right hand from his mind when he's throwing it, but he's able to change your like trajectory like mid punch to catch you if you go back, or if you come forward, turn into like a more of like a hook punch. Like he's very skilled at thinking on the fly and like mid combination, which is like a skill you see not a lot of UFC fighters have the ability to do.
And the other thing we haven't mentioned is something that'll piece up Ortega. From my perspective, I'd say Ortega's been focused on the hands and improving that. But Volkanovski obviously has like a very strong low leg kick and calf kick game that if he implements that, that's going to completely negate these new boxing skills that Ortega's kind of taken up,
Yeah, exactly right. It's like they always say, if a boxer's heavy on that lead leg to land the jab, you sort of like the whole calf kick meta sort of just shut that whole style of fighting down. Is that as soon as people step in heavy on that lead leg, they just think chop it and get out of the way, and it sort of shuts that whole thing down. So I would assume.
I like Volk's movement off the center line with the kicks too. He evades well at the same time he's throwing those kicks, like right?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, and the only other thing I was thinking, which you might be able to answer a bit, obviously not on Volk himself, but on you, on what you've had happen. So someone recovering, I was just thinking recovering from COVID, like
Yep.
Volkanovski had COVID, had pictures of blood that he'd spat out into the sink, and that's obviously he was in a pretty bad way, and documented on some of the interviews and that. From your perspective, you also had COVID because you guys kiss sometimes, and no, you caught COVID because you guys are in the same camp. And I'm just wondering how it's affected you. Like, you still feel anything ongoing from that, or it's all over?
Yeah, nah, bro, I'm sweet. I think Balco did a story actually when we were first in quarantine, which I think sort of sparked everybody's worries a little bit.
Mm.
But what happened was we went from sort of like obviously the training in Vegas, so we were doing lots of live rounds and that, but there obviously wasn't sort of any like real high intensity hit out sessions. And then we have a session called a lactic session where it's just sprints and that. So we ended up having to do like a modified version of that, and it was what was it? I think it was 20-second sprint on the assault bike as fast as you can,
Yep.
40 seconds rest. And we'll alternate in between that. He'll do 20 jump off, I'll do 20 vice versa. And we did that for 5 or 10 minutes straight. But what we didn't take into account, I think that was our second day back in the Australian hotel quarantine. And we were on our balcony. So the air temperature outside was about maybe 4 or 5 degrees if we were lucky in the morning. So 3 days before that, we were in Vegas and Austin, living there. So we were used to like mid 30, 40 degrees, like dry air. Then we come back to Australia and it's like 3, 4 degrees air, and we're super exerted, like real deep chest breathing. And even me, like I had no side effects from COVID in my lungs or anything. And I felt like I had almost like an asthma attack, almost like it just killed our chest in that. So Volko ended up doing an Instagram story talking like, I don't know what happened, like if the COVID still got me, but like this session killed us. And then about 3 days later, we did the exact same session inside where we had some warmer air in that, and it wasn't a problem. So it
Yeah.
was purely that we weren't used to like ever air in that. And we were surprised because there's actually a lot of people sort of worried about like, oh, how's his lungs? It's still affected like 3 months later after he got it. But it was just us not realizing the sort of climate change that we went through so quickly and being super exerted breathing in that cold air. But now we've been back in training camp with the exemption and everything now, and we've been doing the hard sessions, and like, yeah, still I think his camp starts on Monday, 8 weeks out, and it's, yeah, he's gonna be in phenomenal shape. It won't be an issue whatsoever.
That's good to hear, man, because you hear these rumors floating around about COVID really fucking people up for like the long term. So it's good to know that it is, or it can be just a rumor, and not everyone's going to suffer like that.
I think it's how you bounce back from it, because Volko, like when he got it, he was pretty smart. Like I think it probably took us probably 3 or 4 weeks after we actually tested negative in that to sort of pick up the training intensity a bit. Where I got told stories of Hamza, who was training at Extreme Couture, and he would do like a 3 minute wrestling round, go off a mat, like die because he couldn't breathe for like 5 minutes struggle, then he'll jump back on the mats again. So he sort of made the condition worse than himself in that. But then you also hear stories of Cody Garbrandt, who was unlucky. He stayed fit during it all, but still he just couldn't get his lungs back for a long time. So I think it affects each people individually differently, but you sort of have to let it run its course, take the actual time to properly recover. Like Volko got all the stuff and tests done at the PI, like said it was fit to go, he's good to go, and we just had to wait that little bit extra time to show the caution. But once we got the all clear, like, yeah, it's not an issue anymore.
Yep, cool. That's awesome. So, man, I'm going to give my take on what's going to happen before yours, because mine's more objective.
We all know what's coming from me, eh?
So, although I'm like we said, super stoked with the way Ortega's fighting, and the last fight looked well improved, but I still expect two possible outcomes for me is Volkanovski catches him early because he likes to power forward and powers hard and takes him out, or he softens up his legs, softens up Ortega's legs in the beginning and then takes him out later. But either way, for me, I'm just picking KO. I mean, people like to have a go at me when I say KO for someone, but you look at Volkanovski's record, and the majority of his wins are by KO. So if you say, if I'm picking Volkanovski, I'm going to pick his most common outcome, which is KO. So I'm picking Volkanovski either probably within the first 3 rounds, I would say. Your thoughts?
I'm obviously going to go the sort of same thing, Volko by KO. But I think a lot of people, when you say that to you, they're like, oh, if you look at what Max did to Ortega, they're like, oh, how do you think Volko is going to stop him? Max's style is, as you know, he's a lot of a volume puncher. He's not trying to knock you out with a 1-2. He's trying to land the 1-2 so he can hit you with it 10 more times during that round, sort of thing. Whereas Volko's he's throwing with intent. He's throwing that intent to finish you. I think that's what's going to really be a different factor. Whereas you come from fighting someone like Max and that, whereas Ortega obviously toughed it out, but Max might have only been throwing 50-60% shots the whole time. But I think when Volko really starts, like you said, chop the legs, dig them shots in, he might not get hit as much, but when he gets hit, it's going to get hit a lot worse than what he's used to. And that's what I'm thinking. I think Volko might stop him later, to be honest. I think it will probably be around a third or fourth round stoppage. I think that's when Volk will get him. I think Ortega is still pretty durable and tough early, but I think once he realizes the pace and pressure Volk can put on him, I think he will start to crumble. And Volker, as soon as he's seen, if you see what he does to Chad Mendes dropped him the second round. He jumped straight back up, saw he started to fade and finished him about 2 minutes later, sort of thing. So I think that might be the situation, whereas Volker will see him start to fade, push for gas pedal on, and then he starts to crumble him and finish him late in one of the later rounds.
Awesome, man. So yeah, thanks, man. It's good to have a little bit of insight because you've obviously been around Volk a bit, and you've you know about the COVID. You both experienced it, and you're both training at the same gym at freestyle fighting gym, right? In
freestyle fighting. Yep.
Is it Shalaba? Is it in Shalaba?
Sort of. Wingdang.
Wingdang. Sorry, it's
Wingdang. Good old Wingdang. Yeah, Shahaba City though.
Yeah, awesome. And one thing we didn't mention is that I believe I've seen a lot of posts lately. I believe that Volk has recently achieved his black belt in cooking. Is that correct?
Yeah. He may have officially got his black belt in cooking, but to be honest, he's been a black belt for probably for the last 3 years. I remember I was 17 at Jim Barbie's, and I had no idea what a good barbie was. He rocks up with his own spit rotisseries and stuff with pork and lamb and stuff. The man can cook, eh?
Yeah. That's good, man. Another skill. He can open some
man of many
later.
talents.
He can open some Volkanovski cooking things. I don't know what you'd have. Probably he seems to like the barbecue, right? So it'd probably be a Volkanovski barbecue pit or something.
I think that's definitely after his career in fighting, he's definitely going to be some sort of barbecue chef or something like that. Wouldn't surprise me.
That's it, man. All right, Colby. Thanks for your time again, man. And let's see how we go with those predictions.
No worries at all, bro.